Rufinus turned at the sound of a clatter and stopped, drumming fingers on crossed arms while he waited for the clerk to gather up the wooden-cased wax tablets he'd been carrying in a precarious pile. Once the soldier gave him a sheepish nod, he turned back and strode on again, teeth gritted at the sound of the young lad following, struggling to hold his burden. And what a burden! A month's worth of sick lists, duty rosters, equipment requisitions, troop transfers, and every other minutiae of military command. A veritable banquet of tedium. Grudgingly, deep down, he had to admit that it was the poor young clerks like the lad following him who did most of the actual work. He just had to give them the once-over to make sure they looked correct, then sign and seal them for the records office. That was all the army was these days. Paperwork. He sighed, kicked at a pebble, and then cursed quietly as his knee twisted slightly. He seemed to be becoming prey to small nagging pains that had no source these days, too. When had he got old, he wondered. All his important birthdays had passed without really being marked. At 18, he'd been halfway across the empire, furious at his father, running away to join the legions. At 25, he'd been rather busy saving Commodus from his sister. At 30, he'd been comatose, following a fall from a cliff in Dacia. At 40, well, last year, he'd been working hard to prepare for this year. Now here he was at 41, practically ancient. And he felt it. Not just because of the aches, which he suspected might be willing to leave him alone if only he exercised a little more, but also because what had always been an exciting career, for good or ill, was just rather dull now. That was probably the rank, though. Tribunes of the guard probably all felt like this, when in garrison, anyway. He paused, listening to the sound of tablets being rescued once again, without even turning this time, and sighed once more. Of course, some tribunes were living the exciting life. All the tribunes of the Praetorian Guard right now, in fact, except one Gnaeus Marcius Rustius Rufinus, because all the other tribunes were in Parthia with the emperor, conquering and looting. Every cohort of the Guard was out there fighting for Rome.